There it
we
went.
go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello again. We're working on our internet, YouTube videos, those types of things. I'm hearing back from other people, different ways to do this that we'll keep trying and see what we can do that best presents the Word of God to us in this time. Today I'd like to take a look at our psalm coming up for this Sunday. Looked at Psalm 23 already. The psalm for this Sunday is Psalm 130. I'll read it first and then take a look at the words. It's kind of amazing how just a random psalm on a somewhat random Sunday would speak directly to the situation that we are in right now. And I think that's what Psalm 130 does. Out of the depths I cry to you, O Lord. Lord, hear my voice. Let your ears be attentive to the voice of my supplications. If you, Lord, should mark iniquities, Lord, who could stand? But there is forgiveness with you, so that you may be revered. I wait for the Lord, my soul, and in his word I hope. My soul waits for the Lord, more than the watchman for the morning. More than the watchman for the morning. O Israel, hope in the Lord. For with the Lord there is steadfast love, and with him great power to redeem. It is he who redeemed Israel from all its iniquities. I think there's something the author here wants to emphasize, and usually if you want to emphasize something, we repeat it. And he repeats one verse, or the author repeats a verse here in verse 6. My soul waits for the Lord, more than the watchman for the morning, more than the watchman for the morning. Now there's different versions of this. People have translated these words a little differently. Some people say someone on guard duty, they use that word guard. Other translations use sentry. It would be more of a military word for a guard, but it's someone who is watching during the night, however you would translate. They're watching during the night for the morning. And I was thinking about how we're looking at this, or how we're reacting to this coronavirus in almost a military fashion. The president has used those words, and he's using some of his powers as a president that would be used normally during wartime. Now he's calling upon National Guard in several states. And they're not there for wartime, they're there to protect us. They're National Guard. And they will do their duty where they're called. But there seems to be a sense of a battle here. And I think this speaks to it. This psalm speaks to that. Now, I have no military experience, none at all. I've read books, I've watched movies, I've done those things, and I thought, well, I wanted to try to find out what's it like to be on guard duty, be a sentry in the middle of the night in a combat zone. First thing I do, what do you do when you don't know anything about anything? You Google it, right? I thought, well, I can Google this, I can find something out about this, and I did find out a little bit, but it didn't really give me any sense of what that must be like. I've never experienced it myself. So I better thought about who do I know that has been on guard duty or been a sentry in the middle of the night, in the middle of a combat zone. And there's probably some of you out there looking at this right now who have done that. And I could have called you if I had known that of your experience. But the person I thought of was a friend of mine who was a medic, a combat medic in Vietnam, and served his country during that wartime. And it doesn't talk to me about it, doesn't bring it up very often, but I knew that he had probably done this as going out on different patrols, even as a medic, that he probably took his turn to be watch or to be guard in the middle of the night. So I called him up on Sunday afternoon when I was looking at this yesterday afternoon, and talked to him and asked him that question. Neil, what was it like? What was it like to be on guard duty when you were out on patrol in Vietnam, in the middle of a war zone? What was that like? And I think I caught him a little off guard asking that question. He had to stop and bring those feelings back up from many, many years ago now for Vietnam veterans, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, to think about those things. So it took him a minute to kind of open up about that. But I gave him all the time that he needed, and it was interesting to have that discussion. What was it like at night, was my question for him. He said the worst was when they would go out on recon missions. There'd only be 6 or 8 of them. You didn't have a whole platoon or a whole group of other soldiers with you to give you some sense of safety or some sense of protection. There were only a few of you. And I think this psalm speaks to that loneliness, that solitude that we might feel, and how that intensifies the emotions that we're having at the moment, and how that intensified those emotions that Neil was having, that he was pulling back, feeling once again that when he was in Vietnam, being on guard duty in the middle of the night, while his other companions or soldiers with him, 5 or 6, 7 of them, were trying to get some sleep, but he was in charge of watching. He said the worst thing in the darkness was any noise. Any small noise just made you jumpy, and you wondered what it was. Was it an animal out in the jungle? Was it just the wind? Was it the enemy coming to get you? You didn't know, and you felt vulnerable. And I thought about that. You know, is that the way we might feel? Some of at different times for myself, we just feel vulnerable right now. And what is that like? Like being on guard duty in the middle of the night. We feel vulnerable. How? We don't know where the enemy is. We don't know who might be infected. Can I even go to the store? Can I leave my house at all? There might be that vulnerability that we feel. And then other people who are alone right now and feeling vulnerable, maybe because they're sequestered in a nursing home or hospital, can't even have visitors. I just got a call that one of the members up at Tingvold is in the hospital in Ferguson. Nobody can visit him. Nobody can visit him. We'll try to stay in touch through phone and those things, but there's that vulnerability, that aloneness that comes, that my friend Neil felt when he was on guard duty in the middle of the night, in the middle of a war zone in Vietnam. So we think about that. He said that the other thing, one of the things that he says, that you become so hypersensitive to any sound. You're just hypersensitive to anything going around you. And to think how we are about that right now. I'm hypersensitive about the news. Is it good news or is it bad news? Are they coming up with a new vaccine, or is it bad news that things are getting worse? Things are getting worse. Just hypersensitive. I want to know, okay, is this newscast going to be a negative or a positive message for us? Just become hypersensitive to that, as if we were out in the middle of the night and nothing else to guide us but those sounds around us. And just nothing else to guide us sometimes but the news that we get from the outside. The other thing that Neil said is that the darkness just gets to you. You're sitting out there in the pitch black, and it just overwhelms you, and it can just crush you. And that you really are just waiting for the morning. Maybe if you're one of the first shifts, you're waiting for your shift to be over. But will it be any better when you're off your shift? Will you be able to get any sleep at all out there in the middle of the jungle? I don't know. It would not be easy, I don't think. But he said that darkness overwhelms you, and you easily become paranoid. What is going on around me? The enemy knows where I am. I don't know where they are. All of those things. And you wait and wait. The one thing he said, if you're going to use this example to talk about this psalm, make sure people hear you say that the sun will come up. That's what you're waiting for, and that it will happen. He could remember that as we talked about this. He could remember that feeling that was the only hope that they had. It would move from darkness to light. They weren't moving into further and further darkness, but sooner or later, morning would come, the sun would come up, and he said it was even hard for him to find the words, the relief the relief that that brought him from that guard duty that he had been posting throughout that night, the relief that sunrise came, that the sunrise was for that whole group of men out there in that war zone. And the sun would come up. He said, just make sure you emphasize that the sun came up every day, and it gave us a new light, a new perspective on where we were and where we were, what we were called to do in that very, very difficult situation. So I thank Neil for those words, for that experience that he was willing to share with me, and now I tried to share with you what that was like, what it's talking about in the psalm here. More than the watchman for the morning, more than that, we long for God's presence in this time. I also asked my friend Neil about one thing I'd seen on the internet. Don't believe everything you see on the internet, but they said there's 10 general orders for people, for soldiers, sentries to follow when they're on guard duty. And asked them, Neil, do you still know those? And he probably knew them by memory and probably was asked them several times and had to, boom, state off those 10 things. But he had forgotten them. He said, I don't know any of those things anymore. I don't even remember. I don't know, did we ever have to memorize those? So he wasn't concerned about following those rules anymore. That was long from his thought process. But I do think they're interesting. The 10 orders that, and some of you probably know these who are in the military. The first thing, if you're on guard duty, take charge. And then I think one of the things that we've seen in the flooding that happened in the Red River Valley several years ago that really astonished FEMA and the national leaders that came here is that we are a people who take charge. We do that. We take charge of our own destiny. We don't just wait around for others to help us sometimes when things happen. We take charge. The second order is be alert. Be alert. No playing with your phone now. This is not a time to do that. Be alert to things that are happening around us and then make a report. Maybe there's something that we hear, that we know, that's not common knowledge to our neighbor. Maybe they don't have internet access, whatever. Report that to them. Tell them. Keep them informed of what's going on. Stay focused. That was, I think, it would be number 6. Stay focused. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea if you're on guard duty, doesn't it? And for us now, too, to stay focused. It's easy to kind of get off focus. Well, I'm just going to go do something else. I'm not going to be focused on this anymore. And we do need those breaks. When we're on guard duty, we need to stay focused. And then it says, the last one, obvious, of course, it would seem, but it's be especially alert at night. That's number 10 in this list. It's a challenging time. Be especially alert at night. Yeah, we know what that's like. Be especially alert when we can't bring in all the information. It's just not out there. It's dark. Much of what we see, we don't know. We don't know when this is going to end. All of those things. Be especially alert. Be especially alert. Maybe that's for news and information that isn't true. Be especially alert for that. Be especially alert. How are our neighbors doing? Be especially alert to people around us that might have needs right now that we can fulfill. Be especially alert in this time of what I want to call a night watch, watching for the morning. Be especially alert. I thought that was interesting, those 10 rules that the military has for being on guard, and that this psalm writer talking to us about that, how difficult that is, but how difficult this waiting that we are doing is today. So as we go out to think about that, when we feel like a watchman waiting for morning, that we're on some type of guard duty here, guarding over our own families, whatever that might be, that it's hard. It's hard to wait for morning. But here's what Neil said. Here's what my friend Neil Asper said, combat medic in Vietnam. The sun's going to come up. He said it did every morning in Vietnam. The sun's going to come up here too, and it'll be a new day. Amen.